So yeah, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming to the artist talk on the for the piling exhibition, but also like a big kind of update of what I've been up to since you've probably seen my work last, which was either at the Orison Project or the Cooley Gallery or at St. George's Hunter Gallery. So yeah, this is like an update on what I've been up to. And let me just introduce you to Budgie real quick, who's the owner of the gallery and has been like an amazing collaborator and friend and all the things. But let me introduce you to Budgie here.
Hi, nice to see everybody. I can tell you a little bit about the space really quickly before Jasper starts discussing the show. But basically I opened Ecstasy over 3 years ago. It was in April 2017, my first year of graduate school at the Art Institute. I was in the MA Art History program. That's actually how Jasper and I know each other. But essentially the gallery is in an extra bedroom in my apartment. So it's an apartment gallery, but I worked at galleries for 5 years prior to moving to Chicago for grad school. So I treat it very seriously and professionally. And there's obviously sales and a lot of work involved. And I try to get press for every show as well. I think that's really important to kind of immortalize the show by having some kind of review. So it's working with clients and it's working with writers, and it's bringing in the kind of general Chicago art community as well. But I've never done something like this where we've had people based in other cities with a Zoom kind of thing like this. So it's very exciting. I'm happy Jasper is able to show the work to people who can't see it in person. But yeah, and I mostly do solo exhibitions. So this is the 12th show. And I focus on new and recent work, but it's not limited to any specific kind of media. So I've shown sculpture and video and painting and drawings, and we've done performances in the backyard. So it's a little bit of everything, but I like working with one artist at a time and really getting to know them and their work. I think that makes for a better show in some ways. And it's also what the space kind of lends to as well. So it's been really wonderful working with Jasper, and I'm glad that you guys will all get a chance to speak. So nice to meet you, and thanks for hopping on.
Yeah. So just a kind of update on, oh no, nice, new people join. Hey, new people. Just an update on, or just an overview. The talk will last about 30 minutes, 35 minutes, and then there'll be a Q&A. I'm gonna show you the show. I'm gonna show you the show. Hold on, I'm just getting a little reverb there. One second. Yeah, so I'm going to show you the show on my phone really quick, just so you can get kind of a sense of the space and what it looks like as if you were walking through the show. And then I'm going to show you images, nice images that I took of the exhibition and install photos, which I'll talk about the work more when I'm actually showing you the photos. And then I'll give like an update on work that I've made in since and since you've probably seen my work last. So I'm just going to switch over to oh, and the fun thing about this talk actually is that I'm going to do it in reverse chronological order, meaning that I'm going to talk about my most recent work and then move back in time. So most artist talks move linear in a forward linear fashion, going from oldest to newest. This is going to be going from newest to oldest. So kind of keep that in mind as you're seeing the work. But yeah, I'm going to transfer over and show you the show in probably like 3 or 4 minutes just to get a sense of the space. So one sec. There we go. Can everyone see this?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, good. So this is the Budgie's apartment here. And the history, Chicago has actually a really deep history of apartment galleries. Unlike New York, people in Chicago can afford, extra bedrooms. So it's actually a huge thing that's all around Chicago. And the show starts with these two paintings, and these are kind of like the preamble paintings, or kind of like the preface to the show in a way. And again, I'll show you more of this and talk about actual pieces in a second, but just to give you an idea. And Ethan Barrett, who's actually going to join the call in a second, he's an amazing photographer, and we collaborated on these photos, and I'll talk about more about that collaboration in a second. We've got these photos here, beautiful. They're actually shot on film. And yeah, Ethan added a great touch to the show. I kind of don't like how artists work so alone, so I try to collaborate a lot. And this is like a pile of kind of the paintings that informed the larger works in the show. And so this is the entry to the show here. There's this door here, and you come in, and on your left here is a collage that I made with Ethan's photos that I'll talk about more in a second. And then up in this window here is a sculptural work made by casting aluminum and bronze around a found piece. And then right over here is this metal work here that's made with torch welding. I'll talk again, I'll stop saying, I'll talk about that more later. And then you back up, and you can see a large installation of oil paintings on linen. And then there's also this painting over here, a more quieter painting. And then you go into the closet here, which has a lot of these metal works, forged metal works, that have a it kind of feels like energy is stored in them. And then another wooden work here. So just to give you an idea of the space, I figured, and I'm actually really happy because it's a really small space and the work really bounces off of each other in really interesting ways. So let me walk back over here. So this you'll be able to see the work much better now. Let's see. So yeah, so this is the space here. Oh, let me just keep time. So this is the space here, and these are the preamble works that I was talking about. I'm an artist that, I'll be working on a main series of work, but I really embrace kind of intuition and tangents in the studio. If I'm feeling, I feel like art is a way for me to really filter and process the world, and you kind of have to remain open. So, it's easy to kind of get locked into a way of working. And so I try and stay open, and these are kind of representations of that. The work on the right is a figure painted from a medieval painting, and I painted it on the floor, and it really feels like the paint is, if you saw it in person, is so physical, as if because it was painted on the floor, I could really walk around it and really sort of build up the painting, the paint as if it was kind of a sculptural material. And then this work here is actually all about rhythm. I've done a lot of work about, I teach this class called Sequences, Iterations, and Permutations. And actually that's been a huge part of this show. All this work was made in 2020. And at the time when the pandemic hit, I was teaching at the Hyde Park Art Center, which is a local art center here in Chicago, and it's an adult class that has really informed this show. And so that class started in the beginning of the pandemic, and I work very iteratively, kind of where like a small move something small can lead to like tons of complexity, where kind of one thing leads to another and it becomes a whole world. And so in that class, I was actually making a lot of diagrams about rhythm, because in that class, instead of focusing just on one image, we focused on working in groups of images. And so if you're thinking about working in groups of images, it's much, painters work in series, for example, but I was really thinking about not just the single painting as the work, but the group of paintings as the work, or whatever images I'm using or the students are using. And so I think about rhythm, and I'm really influenced by music. So these black squares are literally notes where it's like boom, 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 boom. And you can kind of sing or this painting in a way. And there's different, I'd also not really made a pattern painting in a while. So, I think often I will, if I get too comfortable working, I'll like work against that and try a new type of painting. But these two paintings existed in my studio together, and they just felt like they worked well together. So that's why they actually start the show, is because they kind of grew together in the studio. This starts this is, you can kind of see the show starting the bedroom that I was mentioning here. And this image on the right, right here is a photo that Ethan took. And Ethan was actually a former student, and he ended up taking in a different class, and then he ended up taking the sequence and iteration and permutation class, and became friends. And like I said, I'm like, artists working in the studio, particularly, I'm like I love making images. So I'm really there every day. But it can be lonely. And I'm really jealous of how musicians can work together, either in a band or even just having a music producer come in and help in that process. So I invited Ethan to come in and take photos of the subject of my iterations, which you'll see in a second. I actually drew a line in the sand, because art, when you're making art, you sometimes have to create kind of structures, or else you could just do so much. So I actually drew a line in the sand and said, Ethan, can you can sort of walk in between the two lines and take photos of this concrete piling that's holding up a highway. And this is right by my studio, actually, the subject of this show in a way. I'll talk about this in a second, actually. Let me get to the actual piling works. And you can see some more of the, when I drew that line in the sand and Ethan was walking in between it, he took stunning photos of not only the photo that I designed and really did my paintings from, but also the other moments as well. I'll show you the actual piling paintings here. So this is the grid of piling paintings. They are all oil paint on linen, and it really started with this one painting. And I actually, just to clarify, Ethan took the photos within the last month and a half. I started, these paintings were done, this painting was, all these paintings were done in 2020. So the photos came second. So with these paintings, with this first one, I went outside and I was like previously working from past images, memories, photographs, and I just wanted to switch up my way of working. So I brought this canvas outside. And painters are really obsessed with space and how space fits together. And I just like the heaviness of this concrete form, and it felt like it was holding up the top of the painting. I liked how it met, I think I was really interested in gravity and how it met the sidewalk. And yeah, this is the sidewalk, a tree here in the background. And once I did that first painting, I really enjoyed the composition and wanted to work iteratively. An iterative way of working really means like, you know, it's kind of like rolling a sticky ball down a hill, and that sticky ball will gather information as it goes down the hill. Maybe some things will fall off that sticky ball. But this show, if you could boil it down, is really about iteration. And with that SIP class, the sequence, iteration, and permutation class, it was also a way of me, realizing that, wow, my way of working that's very expansive, can help other people. And there was a lot of first-time artists in the class, very advanced artists, and we all worked in this iterative way. So this is a painting I did that is taken from this composition. And once I started working within this way of working, the composition kind of became part of me. Like it's really in my bones now, and I can switch up the how the architecture of the sidewalk or different parts of it, and it's like the more you do something, the more repetition is one of the most powerful tools in kind of the world, but in art, that's for sure. And I added new elements to it. So this is like, you can see the piling form here. And originally, for example, there was a tree back here, but the tree in some of these other paintings like turned into like a kind of trailer or like a kind of green sun. Yeah, they kind of turned into a sun here. But yeah, and then this element is actually, I realized that the shows that I really remembered and really hit me in my gut, and that I would think about for a long time, were really about simple things. If you boil them down, they might be about, violence or beauty or time. And so this is usually some of my work is really expressing sort of abstract ideas, but sometimes they're expressing very sort of simple ideas like this. This is actually just something I did when I was in a Zoom meeting, the first sketch of this, but it's actually just a diagram about time. So this is like continuous time, breaks of 1, breaks of 2, breaks of 3, then a period of great change, maybe is represented by the red, breaks of 4, and so on. I continued making iterations of this piling, and this is like a very painterly version of the piling. The one of them that I skipped is actually not from my memory. I actually went with this one out and chose a different piling that is holding up, or a column is really what they are, holding up a billboard. That's why this one painting looks slightly different, because this is kind of the mechanics of the billboard. This is a very heavy one with this big black square in the middle, and the frame was broken here because I'd established my structure with this size, and I decided to break that with this painting here. And actually, this is a perfect example of where iteration can take you. This shape here, it's kind of Jean Moreau shape. You can see it develop, and I'll go kind of reverse order. You can see it sort of bubbling up. It's actually started as the sidewalk, sort of starting there. And you can see here, it's just a slight curve. So that slight curve really grew into its own language and its own thing. This is one of my favorite paintings in this series of where I shrunk the composition. And I think even like the majority of y'all probably know my cast picture work, cast in metal. And I think I've really been, you know, I mean, this is probably oversimplifying, but really I've been trying to figure out the image. And I think with that work, it was like casting it in a sculptural material, realizing its physicality. And so I've been really sort of trying to figure out painting and how and image making and where they can lead, both kind of formally, socially as well. Yeah, so that's kind of like a shrunken one, but I wish you saw this in person because there's a blue background here. And like I painted blue and then I painted white and then yellow. So it's a very complex surface of like a surface that's both cool and more yellow at the same time. And playing with perspective in this one. And then it got very complicated in this one here, where if you I'll zoom in. And these are kind of like strips. The piling has become strips. Think of like a film strip or something. But in this, if you look right here, you can see that piling shape and going in this direction, kind of to the left, following, you know, this strip, and then there's a piling painting here. So if you kind of tilt your head left and right, it'll sort of snap together. But yeah, it's, you know, I'm pretty, in ways, a pretty simple artist. Like I could come up with like, oh, maybe this is about thinking, maybe this is about how we kind of layer information in our heads as we're kind of thinking, where we kind of layer them together. But it also is maybe just about abstraction as well. And then let me show you. Yeah, so you can see the show here in its totality here. So a lot of the very iterative work that was all iterations off of that one subject are on the left. And then I painted this painting last, and it's a simplified version. It's actually, it doesn't have the subject matter of that concrete column, but I think it's doing something similar to what those other paintings are. Art sometimes is hard to verbalize, so I can't exactly tell you what, but I can tell you at the time I was teaching, I also teach on the college level at the Art Institute of Chicago, and I taught a class on print installation. The whole title is called Print Installation, Multiples in Image Structure. And when I was teaching the part about image structure, I was looking at a lot of geometric abstract artists, particularly from Latin America, Cuba, and Brazil. There's a movement in Brazil called the concrete art movement, where it was very geometric. And you know, geometric abstract artists think a lot about image structure. So I think that too is part of this work, because at the time I was looking at a lot of those paintings. But little kind of painting moments here. On one side, it meets this ochre, yellow ochre meets the square in the middle, and then on the right it kind of moves over it. And then moving on here, this is that. Oops, sorry. This is the closet, and these are torch welded, and I think in this show, in many ways, is like a real culmination of many different ways of working, and these are connected, I think, to my metal pictures in a way. I could tell you what I was thinking when I made them, but I will in a second, but I honestly think they've just taken on their own energy. And my original idea, I was watching a documentary of an artist this morning, and he sort of said the same thing. He's like, I could tell you why I made it, but it's like, you know, it's gonna, you could take, oh yeah, Cecily Brown, there's a painter. She said, I could point out everything, all of the little moments in my painting, and that's a horse, and this is a rabbit. But, you know, art kind of can, it unfolds differently from everybody. But yeah, this is actually torch welded. So it's welded without using electricity. So it's how welding, you know, before electricity was done, it's really done just with heat. So it really kind of really highlights the sort of melding of two materials. And in this closet are the majority of these pairings I call them brackets. And the original actually function of these brackets was I made them to actually put pictures in between. They were like punctuation. So I will do that in the future. But the idea was that if I have these two brackets, I could arrange sentences of images in between the brackets and kind of write with pictures. And I plan to do that in the future, but as I made them for this show. And they just sort of took on a life of their own in this show. There's a wooden one as well. There was so much metal. This metal also has such a kind of hardcore energy that it needed a lighter whiter wood, or, you know, yellowy wood to kind of counter that. And actually you know, they are actually, when I was thinking of these as brackets, I envisioned the images to be smaller and more like actual sentences, but actually the bracket is acting like a bracket in the show. There's one here and then one on the other side of these pictures. And just finishing up this show here before I move on to other work, the show ended with this collaboration with Ethan, where anyone who comes can take a free photograph. And we did a suite of 123 photographs or so. And most of them are gone, actually. But there's something nice about sort of a takeaway for a show where you can, and it, you know, when you see a show, particularly painting shows and things on the wall, you can kind of get lulled into painting on the wall. That's, you know, people love free things, and when to be like, oh, I can take a photo, and they choose a photo based on their personality or whatever. But these are some examples of the photos that Ethan and I took, and they're shot all on film. And the one work actually the last work I'll show you from this show that connects Ethan's, oh, I guess I'll show you, yeah, I'll show you this too, is this collage that I made using photo transfers, but it's kind of taking Ethan's photos and kind of connecting them to the paintings. I also worked on this print all the way up until the kind of last moment before the show needed to be finished. And it really was like a repository of my energy as I was making the show. And there's one more sculptural work in the show here that I think kind of really nicely relates to the paintings, actually. I do metal casting as well, and these are kind of like these little jewels. And what's funny about this is a found piece of metal from upstate New York. And where you see this flat area, that's where the metal settled with gravity. So with this jewel here, you know, the hook needed to be kind of horizontal, and with this one, it needed to be vertical. So what's fun about this is that it couldn't be cast in one pour. It needed to be poured in 8 different pours to get all of these different surfaces. So it's really about gravity, this work here. And I did it, if anyone's interested, I can describe how I did that a bit later. Yeah, so let me move on to kind of connecting my work to previous work that you might know me more from. How we are doing? Good. Okay. Just wanted to make sure. Oh, I'll introduce you. Ethan's here. Ethan, do you want to wave? Yeah, Ethan's the photographer, so he's waving, and has been an amazing collaborator and friend. So yes. Cool. So how's my schedule? Okay, so the last thing I'll say with Ethan about Ethan and why I invited another artist is earlier this year, the other thing that was swirling around in my head was I started a huge collaborative project at the beginning of 2020 with 20 artists from Chicago. And I'm really influenced by music producers. And I thought, like, why doesn't that role exist in the arts where like somebody could actually produce someone else's work, so that the artist would say, still be the artist, be the main artist. And then the producer would have like a smaller percentage in that authorship, like 35% is actually what we did. And this is, so yeah, I could talk for a whole hour about this project because it's really sort of still continuing, definitely still continuing. But I just wanted to mention that like collaboration has been, and just people have been really important in kind of this year and kind of just surrounding all of the work leading up to this piling show. And yeah, let's see. Oh, and this just what you're looking at, I should tell you what you're looking at. You're looking at a lot of the collaborations that we made in that producer project that I arranged in an exhibition actually in the middle of COVID, because we were cut off by COVID. You know, we started in January, worked all through March at a residency. Actually, this is at Hyde Park Art Center where I also teach. And then I sort of did this show alone without any of the artists present because I was the only one allowed back. So it was really strange to kind of end it with this installation here. So yeah, so this is kind of the part, even if you thought I've been going, because I don't want to take up too much time, but if I'm going to be moving relatively quickly through my projects, and this is the time in which sort of think about reverse chronological order, because yeah, and I'm going to be moving a little quickly. So if you want me to slow down, just let me know, or just write a note down and ask me at the end. We'll have like a Q&A. But yeah, this is my website here. Before the producer project, I did this show called Polar Station, and the title was really from this painting here of an Arctic research station. Either that, it could be an Arctic research station. Let me go to the full image, or like a ice fishing lodge. But I painted it up in like Minnesota. But I painted it very acidic-y. And this show was actually kind of an epilogue to my previous show that I'll talk about with 3 characters. And in that show, I was thinking a lot about the forms that I use in my paintings as characters. And in the show before this, called Boat, there was 3 characters: a boat, a house, and a hole. And this show, which is in a way a kind of an epilogue to Boat, included this hybrid form of those 3 forms: a boat, a house, and a hole, kind of combined into one, like sort of amalgamation. But what's interesting to me, actually, really interesting to me about this show is that it actually only existed for about 8 people. So I installed this. This is my friend's gallery called Anna's, and they had. I had finished this body of work. If you can't tell, I really like making pictures, and sometimes I reach a conclusion with my work, but I don't have a show, so I'll actually photograph it as a show. And I actually did that with the piling show, and Budgie saw those photos. And there's a review coming out of piling, and they mention the ghost show, like the show before the show, which is I kind of get a kick out of. But this show actually, yeah, was in my friend's gallery and only was up for a couple days, and it was pretty fun because I'd post. It was really made for the photos. So like this, I really did the exhibition design of this through the viewfinder of my camera. So like in reality, if this was a normal show, this painting would probably be farther over to the left instead of towards the closer to the edge. So it was just interesting to arrange a show kind of for to to be posted online, but also like it was a very intimate show because like my friend Max came and it was really like for a small group of people, really small. And I don't know, there's something very intimate about making a show. It gave me an idea to do a show just for select group of people, like maybe even plan that show, like invite the people before, then make the work, then have the opening. But yeah, that was kind of a transition show. And this is the show called Boat, where there are these three characters. This is the whole here. And with this, it's a strange work where it's like, it's kind of like this hole or skylight, but there's also this like metal piece that's sort of pulling back the canvas slightly. And, I think that just to give you an idea of like where this metal piece came and kind of where my work, how it kind of builds, I actually built this little metal piece to like photograph objects. It was kind of I put a seamless paper down, and I used this as like for another project to photograph objects. So it was really like it was made for a very specific function, but then it had an interesting form, and then again it became a new thing and kind of took on its own life formally, and then now as part of this painting. But yeah, back to the characters. Maybe this is the whole as well here. But this sculpture is actually something that I made before I went to grad school and never finished it. And I called it like a window seat. But like how paintings are windows, there's something about this piece maybe about painting as well. And then here's some images of this boat, and you can read into this is how the boat is meeting the house. You could potentially read into significance of a boat culturally, but that's for you to do. And there was also like in this show, all of these at one point in the planning of this show, I was thinking of making these paintings on kind of stilts. And I was like, oh, I could fill the whole gallery with these paintings on stilts. And then I made a lot of models of them, as you can see. But then I was just looking at the models, and it felt like the models were enough and actually more interesting than making them fully. So that's what's happening here is I made this shelf. And then once I was like, oh, I love these models. And they're also put together really scrappily with like hot glue and tissue paper. So they're extremely kind of fragile. But that kind of more ragtag energy nicely complements the larger oil paintings in the show, that kind of block sculpture that feels more connected to like the history of modernism or something like that. Yeah, other strange, I called this one like a beehive piece, but this is actually an oil painting on a slab of wax, and each ring here is actually carved down into the wax. Yeah, oh yeah, and you can see there was actually another little stand here in the show that kind of related to this one. But yeah, this show was about three characters meeting. So this is getting into my work in grad school. This is you can probably see why I would teach a class called print installation. This is a project called the Portal Project, and it is it was Hyde Park Art Center has a show that is kind of like a biennial of all the recent MFA students from like SAIC, where the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, UChicago, DePaul, different schools around the city, UIC. And so I was created into that show, and this is a large installation of my work and of this portal project. And really, I think I'm an artist that I really just like making structures to really be free in and work intuitively. And I thought, oh, if I have portals, I can do anything in between the portals, because I could be working in geometric abstraction and then jump to this sort of spiritual, strange house thing, and then jump to a scene of trees. So a very like really connected to kind of like, you know, like music, jazz, hip hop, and these images here are the portals. And then actually with this edition, there's two versions of this portal project. With this one, yeah, you can see even just simple sequences of a door opening, of fire, of my paintings that have become monsters that are fighting each other, which is happening up there. But in this installation, which curved around, it curved around the door here. Yeah, you can see it curving here. It was really my first exploration of like musicality and using notes. So these are actually risograph prints. I went to grad school at the Art Institute and studied printmaking actually, and it was really interesting because I had never done printmaking before going to grad school. So I was kind of like a kid in a candy shop learning all these new techniques. But these are full notes and half notes, so like boom, 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 and then maybe kind of a muffled note there. So that's the second version of the portal project. And then this is the first version of the portal project. So that was my MFA show, and much more related to these portal prints, and a bit. I think the second version is more well designed. You know, but I enjoy this one, and this one is it's arranged vertically, so it's a portal and then images, portal, images. So there's a vertical kind of organization, and actually the second version that we were just looking at has that vertical orientation, but it's actually there's a break in the middle here. So that sequences of images rise up from the top and then also rise down from the bottom there. Yeah, and this show was done actually the year that I graduated, right before my MFA show, and it's called How to Dig a Hole Outside Yourself. And it's a collaboration, a completely collaborative show with my friend Alden Burke. And really with this show, it was really about our exchange, and really, I can read this. Through exchange, collaboration, and arrangement, How to Dig a Hole Outside of Itself creates scenarios to access unknown outcomes, challenging the titles of artist as maker and curator as editor. This exhibition charts the collaboration between Jasper Goodrich and Alden Burke as they create a shareable practice. Building out of Jasper's existing body of work, Alden sees his iterative and searching image making as a space to curate from within, bringing Alden's faculty for vulnerable and empathetic exchange and Jasper's systematic yet spontaneous processes. The two create a new series of works in an attempt to produce beyond their own imaginations. Through a multiplicity of images, ideas and images, this exhibition encourages its audience to leave with a sense of possibility. And that last line like encourages the audience to leave with a sense of possibility. That's a really kind of persisted in my work, where I want people to like look at my work, whether they're an artist or any maker, whatever, and just feel possibility about the world and possibility about like just whatever in their chosen field. And I think just how yeah, I'll kind of leave it at that. But that's this show. And I'm going to end soon here, but this is kind of interesting. This is Alden and I thought of we wanted to figure out form, and we did these pastel drawings starting with a dot, 2 dots, 3 dots, and the dots start coalescing into a line. And then this is like over 50 images, and it got really, you know, line, then square, then shape, then how shapes layer, and it got quite difficult and quite interesting to think of all the different types of ways you can engage with form. Let me see if, yeah, so it gets very abstract. This is sort of the ending ones. This is, again, in grad school, I'm learning printmaking, I'm learning monotypes, and also image transfers. And this is a really simple piece. It's a family tree of trees. That's this piece. But there's iterative sort of, you can see my beginning interests in iteration, where the tree, it's like a tree person kind of, and I'm experiment, okay, what if the limb on the left was really thick, or the limb on the right was really thick, or it looks kind of like kind of see this one as like a nurse or something. And actually kind of ridiculously, because in grad school you have to do some weird experimentation. This is like me acting as the tree there. Yeah, and then this was the first thing I did the first project I did in grad school. And it really took up like a year, and it was really me, you know, all of the cast pictures, which I'll show you in a second if you're not familiar with them, they were so singular. And after, you know, I made them in college, and I worked on them for 4 years after, and they were really, you know, closed in a way. Like they, you know, they're cast, and they're heavy, and they, you know, sit on the wall, and so I think, you know, after before grad school, I worked in New York at a gallery, and I also think helping package work, and, you know, every month and a half, I was kind of resistant to getting the sort of packaging of an artist, and so I wanted to make a work that wasn't singular, but was more related to kind of writing with images. And I really, yeah, I think I saw some movie, and I was like, why can't my art make me feel the feeling I get when I see a movie, like or that feeling I remember like walking out of this movie. And yeah, and I, you know, I could tell you that each of these have people. It's funny because in grad school, people would say, oh, you make so many images. And, but they said, you make so many images, but it's weird because you actually care about each one. And so I, you know, and that's kind of true. Now, as you can tell from the more recent work, I'm making more like singular paintings. But in grad school, I kind of got known as this type of artist. And it was funny. They were like, have you ever thought of doing just a singular show? And I said, oh, yeah, well, yes, of course. I've did that before. I'm trying to like do something new in grad school. These images that are all the same size, that are small, are actually photos of my commute to the studio. And there's kind of like a metaphor of the commute to the studio and taking the train and having coffee, and how that's relating to the creative process. But there's some simple movements here of just like a piece of paper with a line drawn on it, and then just using a Xerox machine, it gets folded up and becomes a dot. And yeah, this project has lots of you know, you can't see the, I have a whole section of like individual photos, and I'm eventually making this. I've actually photographed each of one of these individually, and I'm making an artist book about these pictures. Oops, sorry. Yeah, so you can see kind of some of the details of the work here. and then yeah, and then actually this is the work I made right before grad school, which is kind of interesting to think of the next piece. But I was living in Cambridge, New York, before I moved to New York and City, and I think these really help me figure out image structure and just like in the possibilities of an image. I took all of these photos walking through the town on one day. And then I just used primarily black paint and white paint to redact or erase information, creating these new compositions. And then 2014, after making all the sort of, you know, metal works, which were devoid of color, I had a really colorful moment, which might have signaled the current show in a way, of these kind of pictures with these little tendrils on them. And then we get to the work that the picture series work, which is all these cast pictures, and you can probably see like seeds of my work in all of this. You know, here you have these cement, ultracal, and gypsum works that, you know, this is like an iteration in itself, a permutation. Yeah, and so I won't show most of these, but I think one does it well, shows sort of the concept of this. This just looks, it erased just looks like kind of a ridge, you know, a ripple or something. And then, you know, this was the original one here, this one that I found at a thrift shop. And then, yeah, and so I'm actually done talking, but let me, yeah, so I actually on my website, just, you know, I finished this about a year ago and I still have to update it, but I have a lot of collections of images. I love in-between works, you know, you know, drawing and draftsmanship and is a huge part of my practice. So, you know, a lot of these in-between works will end up, the forms will end up in the larger works, but yeah, and then this is kind of oops, not this one. Oh yeah, this one here is some work, some of my planning work in grad school, and you can see kind of investigation here of different things. And this, the last thing I'll say, which I think is a good thing to end on, is in an effort to make, you might have, maybe if you saw this in a show, but I had these things called idea charts. So like, for example, to make some of the metal pictures, I literally listed out all of my ideas on this giant scroll. And this runs like, you know, 10, 12 feet. And so once I had them all spread out, I was able to see them and see them all, like good ideas, bad ideas, they were all flattened by being on this one scroll of vellum, and I could combine them in different ways. And so like you have use wicker, half picture, and it becomes this. And so that's how I sort of came up with some of these compositions, like this one here. I would have not really done that naturally without, you know, this is without that chart. And so every like 8 years, I'll make a new idea chart where I try and record all my ideas from my sketchbooks. And so the one that I was going to end with here is, this is kind of my idea chart when I entered grad school, where I sort of laid out everything and then and was able to kind of process it and look at it. But yeah, I think you know, I hesitate to kind of give any conclusion, but I think a simple one is like, art has really become a really good, like it's almost like a living, my practice is like a living friend. There's a dialogue. And I think, you know, yeah, I'll kind of leave it at that. But yeah, I'll just open it up to any questions or comments or anything like that. Or if you want to see any thing that I went too fast on, I have a tendency to go quickly. So yeah, but thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was quite an odyssey.
Yeah, I've always thought, I was always thinking of updating y'all about, because, you go through so many changes when you move to a new city and go to grad school, your work shifts and morphs and changes. And I've always been kind of planning on doing this. So I was nervous, but I'm glad I did it.
Good work, Jasper. It's great.
Yeah. Joe took the SIP class.
I did.
And
Great.
so did my mom, which was awesome. But are there any questions or anything?
Fun to see a lot of the things you talked about in class in your own work.
Absolutely.
Some of the oil paintings, are you ever considering doing really large ones? Because your scale is could work for very large pieces, but you remain within the sizes of somewhat 40 by 50 or whatever I sort of gather that the sizes are. Would you thought of making them like that? The pylon, it sort of screams to be really big.
Yeah, because then it's because it is like about the actual piling. I actually walked past it and I brushed it, and then I was like, I can't disrespect this thing. I like went back and had to put my hand on it. And that was sort of strange how, but yeah, it's about this big. And like in that boat show, I did have some bigger work paintings, but I'm actually, that's the next thing I want to do is work a bit larger. Yeah, the piling ones are kind of like medium large or something. Yeah, like 40 by 50 or 38 by 48 or something like that.
It could be sort of fun. Also the boats. I think the boats could also, be pushed going to be bigger, possibly. I like them a lot.
Jasper, a lot of the series look to me as though they're studies for an animation. And I wondered if you ever imagined putting them together into a film, into movement, actually showing movement as one continuous stream.
Yeah, no, totally. I've done, as I'm answering this question, I'll just show you just a little test animation. This is just a little, actually I just photographed my palm and then just edited it. But I think I've been working towards video art. And it's video art is something that I'm really influenced by. Joe and my mom can attest. I actually show a lot of video art in my classes because it's a pretty avant-garde medium, and it's difficult sometimes. And I've also after grad school, I worked for a performance artist for a year and a half, and who made videos as well. And it's a kind of but it's interesting because I haven't gone. I'm gearing up to it, and I definitely want to make a video in the future. But I think I'm really interested in the image and like painting or just like what the one image can do. So
it's just that the series sort of implied it to me, and then you refer to music a lot, and one can imagine integrating that as well and creating a kind of a integrated art form.
Yeah, well, Tom can attest that Tom's a musician, and I've been like, I text him like every 2 months, and I'm like, hey, can we like do something? We'll get there.
We'll do it soon. We'll do it soon.
But yeah, I think it like art painting is like a puzzle to me, and kind of trying to unlock it and relock it, and yeah, I think that's why I haven't gotten there. But I would love, like, I actually have a show coming up with 2 other artists, and at this place called Comfort Station, which is right in Logan Square here in Chicago, and it kind of looks like Hansel and Gretel's cottage in the middle of a park. It's a really cool space, but we're doing more like getting more theatrical with that, and I think we'll do some definitely music related. That's a great question.
Yeah, Jasper, I think what's really interesting for me is that when you think about artists, traditionally and their path to what they're doing, they usually start out more figuratively, and then they end up being more abstract and more elemental. And it seems like you started out being more elemental, and then you broke into this more sort of figurative, colorful, and it would be interesting to see your path as to how you kind of continue. You have so much energy, and
Yeah.
I mean, your visual and thinking about what you're doing is so kind of enriched, and you have so much vitality, and it really comes across in what you're doing. And I love in your current show the colors that you're using and the way you're kind
Yeah.
of actualizing what you're, how you're using color
Great palette.
and shape.
Great
Yeah,
palette, yeah.
really, yeah. And in that way, it's becoming a little more simplified versus what you showed, through your time when you were studying at in school. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be fascinating to see, how you continue on, because you have so many ideas, and seeing some of the details of some of those very complex pieces that were kind of collections of all these different images. And then when you showed the details, it was very nice to see that, because you then really sort of zeroed in and saw how beautiful all those little pieces are. So yeah, you're remarkable.
Oh, that's so good to
You're
hear.
doing so well, and I'm in awe, and you're so remarkable. I just can't wait to see how you continue to grow.
Oh, that's really kind. I'm glad this is recorded, because I'll have to listen back to that. That's
Jasper,
really-
At moments of doubt, you can listen.
yeah.
what impact has Chicago had on your art?
Yeah, no, so much. And I think it's really about, I also teach, and it's become really important for me actually, and I didn't think it would be, but I teach kids, both at a place called Marwin. I've also taught at a place called After School Matters. And I'm teaching over the summer, I'm teaching, a print college class, and then a Marwin class, and then a landscape painting class actually. That's such a complicated, there's so many layers to how Chicago, I just sort of first thought of kids, because I think I've been in it I taught 4 classes last term. And so the class is about sci-fi and futurism, and we really tell stories, and we actually do oral storytelling. Well, we'll do I'll talk for 2 minutes, and then the next person will talk for 2 minutes. And so it's a way to kind of filter and process, there's a lot of really hard things going on in Chicago right now, in the whole world. And just, I've found particularly particularly with kids, fantasy can be a real place of processing and escape. So that's been a huge influence for me. And it's very fantasy based, like in sci-fi. We actually in the fall, we did a class called it took place in Ogachi, which is the inverse of Chicago, the inverse of Chicago. And then some kid was like, "Oh, it's actually Ogachic," and I said, "Ogachi is more fun to say." But this term we went galactic. But I go to the lake frequently. It's an amazing body of water. It's like when I need, and it's just a 5-minute drive away. And also Marielle and I's studio is 5 minutes from our house. When I was in New York, I had to work really hard to be there. I work really hard now, but I had to have a full-time job at a gallery. And, here, I was able to, you have a bit more, space and time, and things are cheaper to kind of, just build your practice a bit more.
New York's gotten cheap. You can
People are
come
moving.
back to New York.
Yeah.
Do you think it's helped you to be out of that New York mindset and the competitiveness and the intense gallery scene that's there? Having this little bit of distance and space, has that been helpful?
Yeah, totally. Because Chicago is very nurturing. There's so amazing people like Budgie to curate shows, and lots of artist run spaces. There was at Hyde Park Art Center, actually, they did a show called Artist Run Chicago, which had 50 artist run spaces. but yeah, I think, when I was in upstate New York, I was like, you look down at New York and you say, what is this Chelsea thing? And so I worked in Chelsea to sort of figure out, humanize it a little bit. But I think, I got into a school in New York and I decided not to go just because I think the space was really, really, Alva, I think you hit it on the nail on the head. I think I needed kind of a break from that energy, and there's a new energy in Chicago,
Sure. How do you think the last year has affected your work, or hasn't it?
Oh yeah, no,
Specific way?
hugely. Like, I mean, the press release for this show is really, I think, centered a lot on the sort of more social aspects of it. I teach in the SIP class, for example. There's a lot of older adults who are really lonely, in the pandemic, and there's so much going on. Like the murders of Black people in Chicago, and I think they need community. A lot of people need community, and people are lonely, and so I think like the working in SIP has really helped. I've figured out a way of, oh wow, like just my way of thinking can help people kind of process things, and kind of like what fantasy does, but SIP is more about my own practice. But yeah, my work on the surface, like to focus so much on one form, is I find it like it's spiritual, like I think painting painting, to me, it can be very spiritual, and that's not the exact right word, but I think I focused on one subject this year because I needed some sort of grounding or something. I read like an early version of the review that's coming out, and I kind of stole that from him who wrote it. But I was like, yeah, you're right. When people, I think I'm pretty like intuitive, and so sometimes talking about a lot of my friends, or their work is so like perfectly wrapped up and they can talk about it. And I think because I make a bit more intuitively and try and access sort of deep things, it can be difficult to talk about it, express exactly. But I hope that rambling answered your question slightly.
Thank you, Jasper.
Thanks.
Yeah, so good to see both of you.
Mhm.
Vice versa.
Any more questions? These are all amazing questions.
Thanks a lot, Jasper.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this-
a delightful evening,
Yeah.
sharing your art. Thank
Very
you so
productive.
much.
Nice.
Thank
It's really
you.
wonderful.
You started off by saying, and I think it's very true for you to see us in our dotage and for us to see you in your maturity. And it's very reassuring. Very well done. I liked watching it, which is always the mark of a Zoom call.
Yeah, I was hoping not to do sometimes artist talks can be, this is the blue one, this is the red one. So I'm just trying to avoid that a bit. But yeah, and if, there's still lots of works available. So just, if, I sent you the list, if anyone wants to purchase something, feel free to reach out.
Great.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Thanks, Jasper.
Great
you.
job.
Thanks.
Bye, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
What do you want to say? Bye.
Great job, Jasper.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Jasper. Very inspiring.
Davis, oh my gosh, we need to catch up.
Yeah,
It's
we do. We
great
need
to
to have
see
a call.
this, dude.
Sam, awesome.
Awesome. Yeah, congratulations